Have you ever heard of a soil trick so powerful it was banned not because it failed, but because it worked too well? In the mid-1800s, farmers across Europe and America discovered a method that could turn barren ground into fertile soil almost overnight. Fields that once struggled suddenly produced 2 or even 3 times the usual harvest. For families depending on every bushel, it was nothing short of a miracle. And yet this practice was outlawed. It was branded dangerous, unsanitary, even outdated. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked so well it threatened the new systems of industrial agriculture and fertilizer. Here's the twist. The principles behind this banned trick are still valid today. With modern science and safe practices, gardeners are rediscovering it, achieving results that even compost can't always match. So if you've ever battled stubborn clay soil or grown impatient waiting for compost to mature, stay with me. By the end, you'll know how to adapt this once forbidden method in your own backyard and why it still holds the power to outgrow compost. The 19th century was a turning point for agriculture. Populations were exploding, cities were growing crowded, and fertile farmland was becoming harder and harder to maintain. Farmers across Europe and America were desperate. They needed a way to keep their soil alive, something cheap, reliable, and powerful. That's when they turned to a solution that was as simple as it was shocking, what people called night soil. Now, this idea wasn't new at all. In fact, across Asia, especially in China, Korea, and Japan, it had been common practice for centuries. Farmers there collected human waste, carefully aged or treated it, and then returned it to the fields. Nothing went to waste. What left the body went back into the soil, fueling the next harvest. Historians often credit this cycle with keeping Chinese farmland fertile for thousands of years without chemical fertilizers. In Japan's Edo period, human waste was considered so valuable it became a commodity. Wealthy households could actually sell their waste to merchants who delivered it straight to the countryside. Some farmers even competed for contracts with certain neighborhoods because the supply was seen as essential for high yields. Meanwhile, in Europe, the system looked a little different. By the 1800s, cities like London were bursting at the seams, and so was the problem of waste disposal. This is where the infamous night soil men came in. Working under cover of darkness, they emptied chamber pots and cesspools, hauling the contents out of town. Their cargo was then spread onto fields, where it transformed depleted land into rich, productive soil. And here's the surprising part. It worked astonishingly well. Crops fed with night soil often outperformed those nourished by traditional manure or compost. Farmers reported fuller heads of grain, healthier vegetables, and harvests so abundant they could hardly believe it. To struggling communities, this wasn't just a fertilizer, it was a lifeline, a practice that could mean the difference between a thin harvest and a season of plenty. But as you might imagine, not everyone was celebrating. The story of night soil would soon take a darker turn. So why was this miracle method, the one that doubled harvests and kept soils thriving, eventually outlawed? The reasons weren't agricultural at all. They were social, political, and medical. As cities grew denser in the 1800s, sanitation quickly became a crisis. Imagine the crowded streets of London, Paris, or New York, with thousands of people relying on chamber pots and cesspools. When waste wasn't handled properly, it didn't just smell bad, it contaminated rivers, wells, and public water supplies. The result was deadly. Waves of cholera, typhoid, and dysentery swept through neighborhoods, claiming tens of thousands of lives. Understandably, public opinion began to turn. Farmers knew night soil worked, but city dwellers and officials saw it as a breeding ground for disease. The very system that sustained fields now looked like a threat to human health. Governments responded with sweeping reforms. In Europe and America, massive public works projects built new sewage systems to whisk waste away. Out of sight, out of mind. Instead of being recycled back into farmland, nutrients were flushed into rivers and oceans. And just as this change was happening, a new force entered the stage: chemical fertilizers. By the late 1800s, deposits of Chilean nitrate were being mined and shipped worldwide. Soon after, in the early 1900s, the Haber-Bosch process revolutionized farming by creating synthetic nitrogen on an industrial scale. For the first time in history, fertilizer could be mass-produced in factories, promising convenience, uniformity, and big profits. Chemical companies wasted no time promoting their products. They labeled waste-based farming as outdated, unsanitary, and even dangerous. Their message was simple. Why rely on something messy and risky when you can buy fertilizer in a clean bag? The marketing worked. Farmers began to turn away from night soil, not because it failed, but because society and science were being steered in a new direction. By the early 20th century, this once essential practice had nearly vanished from Western agriculture. What had sustained civilizations for centuries was now dismissed as backward. And yet the truth remained. When handled properly, it was one of the most effective fertility tools ever used. Here's the irony. Even as governments were banning night soil, farmers and scientists alike knew exactly how effective it was. Take human urine, for example. Fresh and properly handled, it contains nearly the same amount of nitrogen as many commercial fertilizers you'll find in a garden center today. And it doesn't stop there. Urine is also rich in phosphorus and potassium, delivered in soluble forms that plants can absorb almost immediately. No wonder farmers once called it liquid gold. Now let's compare that to compost. Compost is a wonderful tool. It enriches soil structure, improves water retention, and feeds soil microbes over time. But compost is slow. It may take months to break down, and when it finally does, its nutrients are released gradually. That's excellent for long-term soil health, but it can't match the immediate, concentrated punch that diluted urine or aged night soil provided. In fact, some 19th century agricultural journals didn't mince words. They wrote that urine could outgrow compost because it supplied plants with what they needed, right when they needed it. For a struggling family farmer in the 1800s, that difference could mean everything: a thin harvest or a table full of food. And the evidence wasn't just anecdotal. In parts of Asia where night soil systems remained in place, farmland stayed fertile for centuries, generation after generation. Meanwhile, in Europe and North America, where the practice was abandoned and soils were pushed with chemical fertilizers, fertility often rose quickly but then crashed just as fast, leading to cycles of boom and bust. Even today, researchers have tested urine-based fertilizers against commercial blends and found comparable, sometimes even superior results for leafy greens, corn, and brassicas. And when combined with compost, the effect is even stronger, a balance of quick-release nutrients with long-lasting organic matter. So yes, compost is excellent, but in terms of pure, rapid plant growth, the banned soil trick of the 1800s really did have few rivals. And that's why farmers who used it swore by it, even as lawmakers tried to sweep it out of existence. Now let's fast forward to today. Nobody is suggesting we return to the days of hauling raw waste buckets out of our homes. That would be unsafe, unsanitary, and against every public health standard we have. But what if, instead of throwing out the idea entirely, we looked at the principles behind it? That's exactly what modern gardeners and soil scientists are doing. They're asking, how can we safely recycle nutrients the way our ancestors did, without the risks that made night soil so controversial? The first and simplest answer is diluted urine fertilizer. When it's fresh, urine is sterile. Dilute it with water, usually at a ratio of 1 part urine to 10 parts water, and you have a free, fast-acting liquid fertilizer. Gardeners use it on heavy feeders like corn, cabbages, and tomatoes with excellent results. Some go even gentler at 120 for delicate seedlings or potted plants. The key is to water the soil, not the leaves, and to rotate where you apply it so nutrients don't build up too heavily in one spot. The second approach is composting toilets and human manure systems. This might sound futuristic, but it's already in practice worldwide. By composting human waste for at least a year at high temperatures, all harmful pathogens are destroyed. What's left behind is a dark, crumbly humus that looks and smells just like rich garden compost, only with higher nutrient density. Off-grid communities, eco-villages, and regenerative farms are using these systems successfully, turning what was once discarded into a valuable soil resource. And then there are large-scale projects like P-cycling in Vermont. The Rich Earth Institute has built a program where volunteers donate their urine. It's sanitized, processed, and returned to farmland. Their studies show impressive crop yields, lower fertilizer costs, and a significant reduction in the need for synthetic inputs. Imagine the environmental impact if more communities followed their lead. Less reliance on mine phosphorus, fewer chemicals, and healthier soils. The big lesson here is balance. Compost remains essential for structure, moisture retention, and microbial life. But when you pair compost's long-term benefits with the quick nutrient release of diluted urine, you create a 1-2 punch that feeds your plants today while building the foundation for tomorrow. This isn't about going backward. It's about taking timeless wisdom, adding modern science, and creating safer, smarter ways to garden sustainably. Now let's bring all of this down to earth. Literally, the big question is, how can older adults, especially those gardening at home, use these lessons safely and practically? The good news is you don't need special equipment, heavy lifting, or expensive gadgets. With just a watering can, a little water, and some confidence, you can put these age-old ideas into practice. Here are some practical, senior-friendly tips to get started. Tip 1. Start small. If the idea feels new or even a little uncomfortable, begin with just one garden bed or a few container plants. Dilute fresh urine at about 1 part urine to 10 parts water and apply it to the soil around heavy feeders like tomatoes, corn, or squash. Watch closely over a few weeks. You'll often see greener leaves and stronger growth before long. Tip 2. Always dilute. This part is crucial. Undiluted urine is too strong and can burn delicate roots, especially in pots or raised beds. Stick with 110 for most garden crops, or go gentler with 120 for seedlings and container plants. When in doubt, add more water. Tip 3. Rotate applications. Don't pour in the same spot every single week. Move around your garden so nutrients stay balanced and no patch becomes overloaded. Think of it like crop rotation for your fertilizer. Tip 4. Combine with carbon. Nitrogen is powerful, but it works best when balanced. If you've mulched with straw, dried leaves, or wood chips, pour your diluted solution right over them. The carbon soaks up the nitrogen, preventing leaching and keeping it available to your plants for longer. Tip 5. Timing matters. Apply in the cool hours of morning or evening. This prevents evaporation and gives your plants time to absorb nutrients without stress. Plus, it makes the process more comfortable for you too. No bending over in the midday sun. Tip 6. Don't stop composting. Compost is still the foundation of healthy soil. It adds structure, feeds soil microbes, and locks in long-term fertility. Think of compost as your garden's steady diet and diluted urine as the vitamin boost that speeds things up. Together, they create balance. Tip 7. Stay safe. If you're exploring composting toilets or human manure systems, always follow safety guidelines. That means wearing gloves, keeping waste piles hot and well-managed, and giving them a full year to break down before use. Safety isn't just important. It's what makes this practice responsible and sustainable. And here's something especially important for seniors. This method is light on the body. No heavy bags of fertilizer to carry, no back-breaking work. A watering can and a short walk across the garden is all it takes. In return, you get healthier plants, better harvests, and the satisfaction of using resources wisely. For many of us, gardening is about more than just food. It's about well-being. It keeps us moving, keeps us connected to the earth, and gives us joy. And with this approach, you're not just feeding your plants. You're part of a cycle that stretches back thousands of years, one that still works just as powerfully today. So what's the real lesson here? The story of this banned soil trick isn't just about fertilizer. It's about cycles. Nature doesn't throw anything away. Every fallen leaf, every drop of rain, every bit of organic matter feeds the next generation of growth. It's a perfect circle of renewal. When industrial agriculture broke that cycle, flushing nutrients into rivers and replacing them with chemical products, we lost more than soil fertility. We lost resilience, we lost balance, and in many ways, we lost our connection to the earth. But here's the beauty. As gardeners, we have the power to restore it right in our own backyards. With compost piles, cover crops, mulch layers, and even a simple watering can of diluted urine, we can close the loop. We can feed the soil, strengthen our plants, and rely less on costly store-bought fertilizers that come in plastic bags. And maybe this is why the lesson resonates even more deeply with us in our later years. We understand patience, we understand wisdom, and we know the value of using what we already have instead of wasting it. Why throw away resources when they can be transformed into abundance? The farmers of the 1800s may have been banned from using this trick, but we are free to adapt it safely, responsibly, and wisely. And when we do, we reconnect with a timeless truth. Fertility doesn't come from a bag. It comes from honoring the cycles of life. If this journey into forgotten soil wisdom inspired you to rethink how you nourish your garden, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. We are dedicated to uncovering the history they tried to bury and sowing the seeds for a more resilient future. Join our community of growers today. Let's cultivate the earth together. The next treasure of ancient knowledge will be revealed soon.